Nick Carboni of WCNC joins us to talk about the second overall selection and his question to Mitch Kupchak that went kind of viral, at least within the Hornets community. We'll get to that coming up today on Locked On Hornets.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that does include YouTube, where you guys have been awesome, just piling up the views, subscriptions. It's been fantastic, so go check us out there. That's Doug Branson taking a sip of the coffee, getting swiggy with it. Find his work, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And that's Nick Carboni making what I think is going to be the last weekly appearance for a while. We scared him and his soon-to-be wife off when we talked about attending his wedding. Even if we didn't get the invite, Doug is going to be officiating his wedding.
I don't need an invite.
Yeah,
I don't need an invite. I'll be there. Don't worry. I've been practicing my speech. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to celebrate the union of the Charlotte Hornets and Scoot Henderson, so on and so forth. You get the idea.
All right. So is she going to be okay with that as far as the message goes?
Yeah, no, I think that most brides would probably be. I don't know. I've never been married, so that's just Doug. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably.
If you let me listen, if you let me come to the wedding, you'll be married a couple times. Don't worry.
Wait,
now we denominator was Doug.
Right.
Realizing after 4.
All right, we've managed to scare him even more. I didn't think that was possible from the last time. Just real quickly, you had media availability with Mitch Kupchak. You asked a particular question that pertained to, hey, would you draft a certain someone at second overall? I want to get to that in a moment. But first, Nick, I just wanted to get your thoughts as these results were rolling in, and you didn't see that Hornets logo revealed for quite some time until eventually it was the second pick. What was going through your mind, and what was your immediate reaction after you saw the logo?
I mean, I came into lottery night with such low expectations. I certainly didn't see them moving up, honestly. Whenever I was asked, I thought they'd move back. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was kind of they got lucky 3 years ago with LaMelo. And, they're basically just trying their luck every year. They're not going out and getting good, high-paid free agents in the offseason. It doesn't seem like that's going to be their attack right now under Mitch Kupchak. So getting as far up in the lottery as you can go is humongous. And especially this year with all of the hype around Wembanyama and all of the, people in high places who say he's can't miss and that he could be the best player in the league within 2 or 3 years. I mean, it was just like when it got down to 3, I'm unbiased. I'm a Hornets reporter, not a fan, but I started to get butterflies in my stomach. This could happen. We could have this kid in Charlotte. And then there was just such a crash when, and I don't even remember who was the third team involved. When the Hornets card came out. When the Hornets, when the Portland card came out, it was that's when the butterflies ramped up. And then when the Hornets card was flipped, it was just a crash. And then it was okay, well, everybody says if you're not getting 1 in this draft, you want to be at 2 because that's kind of a de facto 1. According to a lot of people, 75% of people who, prognosticate this kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's certainly how we are. We think there's an easy answer here at number 2 overall. By the way, Doug, it feels like with him feeling the butterflies, this sickness, it is contagious. I think Nick is starting to catch the sickness and being a sicko. Maybe he's becoming a sicko. He got bit by the zombie.
Well, he was thinking of the views. He was thinking of the views on the online videos and the reports and the ratings. He was thinking about all that because Victor
had already pictured myself in Brooklyn interviewing Victor on draft night. Yeah,
a little step stool action. Bring a little step stool and you carry on for sure. A little Tom Cruise action. They put him on a step stool. That would be you.
Nick does his own stunts. Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us were thinking in that vein, both from a fan perspective, and I think the show was thinking, but I think long term, if Scoot or Brandon Miller are the real deal, long term, it's still going to bring a lot of attention. If this team can vault itself into Eastern Conference contention, get to an Eastern Conference final, something this franchise has never done. In fact, if they could win a playoff series, something this franchise has not done in 21 years, if they can do any of that, then I think there will be more than enough attention from this second pick.
All right, so speaking of getting a lot of views, that's what happened when Nick Carboni asked a particular question to GM Mitch Kupchak, who spoke to media after the lottery results were in. We have the question and the answer for you, so I'll just let Nick ask it and Mitch answer it. Here's the clip from Media Night.
Seem to be a lot of good point guards in this top of the draft. Obviously, you have a very good all-star point guard. Could you see a situation which you would still draft that position and try to make that work?
Yeah, I could see it. We're getting a little bit more advanced in putting this team together. I think 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, I would have said without question that we're going to take the best available player. And that's been, our position for the last 3 or 4 years when you're trying to accumulate talent. And, I don't think we're where we need to be from a talent level, but we've got a lot more talent now than we did 2 or 3 years ago. So I think we can be a little bit picky, and take into consideration, not only the overall talent, but also the position.
All righty. That was not reassuring. That is a sicko face. Well, all right, Doug, you hold on to that for a second.
Okay.
Let's go to Nick. and ask what was going through your mind as he was answering the question you asked. Because you said you didn't really expect it to do as well on social media as it did, right? You didn't expect it to blow up.
I wasn't trying to put it out there to upset people. That's for sure. I was just trying to think, okay, this is kind of the situation they're in that position. And at the position of number 2, a lot of people think you should take this Scoot Henderson kid who's listed as a point guard, but we can, and I'm sure you guys have already broken down the different things you can do with both of them on the floor. So when he started to answer it, yes, I think we would. And then even when he went to, we become more advanced, I thought it was he was going to go into this diatribe of positionless basketball and how it could work. And then it just kind of took that hard right into, well, we can be picky based on position now. We don't need to, draft the most talent. So, I would disagree with that. And I don't know if that's who knows? They could pick Scoot Henderson in a month and that was all just kind of a misdirection or, but yeah, I mean, if Scoot Henderson clearly has the most talent outside of Victor Wembanyama, then that is what you want to add to the Charlotte Hornets right now. I mean, they're not doing it in free agency. Mitch Kupchak has basically outright said that. So as we mentioned in the first part of this, having the number 2 pick in the lottery allows you to just chase talent. It's something that this team is sorely lacking and has been for a long time. So yeah, it was a harder right turn than I thought it was going to take there for a second. And then looking back later on Twitter and being oh, this really upset some people, and I get it.
No, yeah. All right, Doug, why did you have the horror face like you heard the sicko intro for another time?
Because it upset me. Because you can't be picky when you haven't won a playoff series in 21 years, when you haven't been to the playoffs in almost a decade. We're talking 7 years since the last time they've actually been to a playoff series, and they didn't win that playoff series. And they haven't been to the playoffs under the current front office. They haven't done it. And so how are you going to tell fans that you can legitimately not take the best player available and instead pick for fit? I'm with Nick. I hope this was either just being, Mitch had to go out in front of the cameras not knowing that they had the second pick, and it was very soon after. So was there an element of just trying to figure out what to say and not being totally prepared? Would he answer differently today than he did then, maybe? Or was this, and Walker, you and I talked about this, we prepared people for a lot of misdirection, a lot of smoke going into this second pick. And so hopefully that's what it is. Look, you can be picky with number 27. You can be picky in free agency. You can be picky with trades. That's how you build a roster. You do need to take positional fit into account as you're doing certain things to build your roster. There's no problem with that. There is a big problem, though, when you're talking about trying to project players at 19 years old. You're trying to figure, you don't know what kind of player they're going to be at 24, 25. And so to draft someone for positional fit when they're 19 years old is ludicrous. You look at, you evaluate, you say, is this going to be the best player available? And that's who you take. And if you do anything else, I mean, all Mitch has to do is ask his boss, Michael Jordan, what happens when a team gets picky with the number 2 pick? Oh, that's right. You miss out on the GOAT and you take Sam Bowie or whatever his name was. I'm hot. You can't get picky with number 2. This is insane.
But I do think a huge part of it is what you said in that rant, is that this was actually had before the second overall pick was in, right? Like, so if those comments came in, is that correct? Right. So
no, this was after the lottery was done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So after the lottery was done, I just wanted to make that clarification.
Yeah.
Like, I think if it was before the second overall pick was in, then this would be a lot more understandable. But I do think the fact that the second overall pick was in, right? You knew Scoot was going to be very possible. I mean, he's going to be possible, right? Like, they're basically, we know Wemby's going 1. So you know who you have to pick from as soon as Wemby goes number 1. Like, for me, that's where I start to raise an eyebrow a little bit. The thing about Mitch Kupchak, we've joked about it a lot. It's the fact that Mitch Kupchak is too honest in these things. It's hilarious. He's not great at speaking with the media. We get transparency, which is what we want, but also it does come across as like the introductory press conference when he says, wait, what's our payroll like? Like, how many more years do we have this guy on our payroll? Like, it comes across like that. Doug, I know you're chomping at the bit. What's on your mind?
Well, because I don't think that fans are upset because Mitch Kupchak is too brutally honest. I think that fans are upset by this clip because to me, this clip really represents maybe both of, I think, the defining aspects of the Mitch Kupchak era with the Charlotte Hornets, which is overestimating the talent that you currently have on the roster or overestimating your ability to develop that talent into legitimate all-star talent that wins playoff series, and underestimating your ability to literally do anything else to build your roster. When it comes to free agency, when it comes to trades, you underestimate. You tell fans point blank, hey, I don't know if we're going to be able to do anything in those areas. It's all about the draft. And then you get to the draft and you're telling fans, well, actually, we might draft for fit instead of best player available. That's what's upsetting fans.
Well, yeah, no, and I know that. I think, but there's so many different people that are suggesting, hey, maybe Mitch is just doing the smokescreen thing and trying to, cover his tracks. And for me, like, that's not something Mitch does. And so the honesty here is somewhat of a problem. I will say, too, like, I have a lot more problem. Like, I agree with the latter part of what you said. Him underselling the other avenues or him just not exploring the other avenues to improve your team and only doing it through the draft. And he was trying to go for talent, right? There's a reason we talked about Miles Bridges and PJ Washington being redundant at the time. It turned out not to be, but we talked about that quite a bit. You get LaMelo, you get Jalen McDaniels, Cody Martin. They're all these rangy, trying to switchable guys, right? So, like, for me, I don't know if he's ever practiced drafting for fit in the draft, which is great. Hopefully that rings true. And he was just, saying whatever to be, trying to be vague and letting his thoughts spill on the mic. Nick, we'll get you out of here on this one. What are your final thoughts on some of those comments and the Hornets being rewarded second overall?
Yeah, I mean, Doug, you hit the nail on the head when you talk about projection, because that's what the draft is. And you don't need to look any further than this draft. I mean, look at the top 5. It's full of a 19-year-old pro player from France, teenage twins, a 19-year-old freshman from Alabama that we kind of saw, like, we would have loved to see more of Brandon Miller at the level he previously played at to know for sure what he's going to be. And Scoot Henderson, who, didn't go to college, went to the G League's basically development team, where, like, I know a lot of basketball nuts watch that stuff. Not everybody does. I assume Mitch Kupchak does, and their evaluators do. But basically, I'm just kind of repeating the fact that this is all projection, and this is based on talent that somebody has that you want to develop. And as much as I loved Brandon Miller, the basketball player, all year watching him, it does seem like Scoot Henderson has the most athleticism, talent, potential of anybody outside of Victor Wembanyama. So yes, I understand why fans are mad to hear their GMs kind of lean into, well, we might not take him because of the position he plays, when we've all talked about the ways that could work.
Yeah, listen, this stuff is hard. It gets confusing when you're trying to project out the draft. So here, Mitch, if you're listening, I'll make it super easy for you, okay? Until you win a playoff series within 3 presidential administrations, it's best player available, okay? Simple.
All right. That is Doug Branson giving the mandate for Mitch Kupchak to go ahead and draft the best player available. That's also Nick Carboni asking the big old question that got Doug this way. See, I blame you, Nick. This is the reason why Doug is angry. If you just didn't ask the question, we'd be all fine. It'd be okay.
No, this and Dom Capers' hair. Unintended
you're responsible. Damn good journalism. Damn it to straight to hell. All right, that's Nick Carboni. Follow him on Twitter at Nick Carboni WCNC. He's going to be covering the All-Star race, the NASCAR All-Star race in Wilkesboro this weekend. So have fun in Wilkesboro, buddy. It's going to be a fun one.
See you guys.
All right, we appreciate Nick's time here. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Thanks again to Nick, and thanks again to eBay Motors for sponsoring the show. And after this, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the comments from Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson at the Combine. As I mentioned, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Now, here's where you do need to actually go for the best fit. Don't go for the best part available. Your car does not need 3 engines, okay? I know they're great. You actually do need to go for the best fit in the eBay Motors draft. Just add your ride to the My Garage tab and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. More Locked On Hornets coming up next. Big thanks to Nick Carboni helping us out. How about from Wilkesboro? Having to spend some time in Wilkesboro this weekend for the All-Star race. So Nick Carboni, a busy man. Plus, I guess we got all the wedding stuff as well, all that, which that's what you're about to fly out. I know. Are you going to his wedding? Is that what you're catching this bird to after the show?
Yeah, for sure. That's one of my stops. Definitely got to pay my respects to the family. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Sounds great. Let's talk a little bit more about Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller, just like we will be throughout the rest of the month leading up to the NBA draft. And let's get to some of the Combine comments. I don't know if you saw, Doug, but I got to watch Scoot Henderson speak with Malika Andrews, speak with Zach Lowe during the Combine. And boy, he just talked a little bit about the Steph Curry mentorship, that dog that's in him. He keeps doing his sign. We're going to have to learn this thing. And I don't know it yet, but he does the circle over the eye, and he keeps doing it anytime a camera shines on him. So we've got a sign from Scoot. That's going to be fun. What did you take away from some of the Scoot Henderson comments that you saw and took note of in, I guess, Chicago yesterday?
Yeah, we should inform the audience that don't know about this partnership that he's formed with Steph Curry and Steph Curry's company, specifically SC30 Incorporated. But there's a business aspect to this, but there's also a mentorship aspect to this. And it seems like, look, Scoot could probably use some shooting tips, and it would be great to get some shooting tips from one of the, if not the greatest shooter of all time. And he did have a quote at the Combine about that partnership. And his quote was that Steph's advice is just to enjoy the moment. You can see that in Steph. You can see how he enjoys the moment, how he smiles through the games. His mentorship is really a relationship that we're building. He's opening doors for me. I'm hoping I'm opening doors for him as well.
Yeah.
Maybe he's opening doors. Who knows? To maybe Steph coming to Charlotte. You never know.
Oh, yeah. I've heard some people talk about that, too. I've heard some people alongside drafting Scoot. Also him bringing Steph Curry, kind of like drafting Bronny James will bring LeBron. We're trying to make the same thing happen with Scoot, which would be fantastic. I love that last part.
I've already got the nickname, by the way. Steph, LaMelo, Scoot, SOS.
Steph, LaMelo.
Scoot.
Are we taking the last letter? Okay. I was like, that's all right. You know what? Let's work with it. That's totally fine. Some of the other comments that he had at the combine. Here's what he said when asked if he thinks that it's possible he'll go number one. He said, for sure, I think I have a possibility of going number one, and I believe in myself as any competitor should. As a competitor, I want to go number one. I want to build that fan base in San Antonio. But he also said, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, my main goal is working on me. That kind of rhymes.
That was a good one. That had a little rhythm to it. See, with you're talking about the circle over the eye. Scoot understands the brand, right? And I don't think he's like over obsessed with it, but he understands that he is on a trajectory right now and he wants to maximize that. But at the same time, he understands if you don't put the work in, if you don't win playoff games, then it doesn't matter how good your branding is. So he gets all of that. And I love these quotes here because you want the guy to be overconfident. You want him to be super confident going into this draft. So yeah, of course, you want him to say he wants to go number one. And the fact that he wants to build the fan base in San Antonio means that when he gets to Charlotte, he's going to want to build that fan base in Charlotte. And if Charlotte decides not to take him and he goes to Portland, he's going to want to build that fan base in Portland. The overall takeaway from those comments is that Scoot feels like he's going to be a force in this league. He feels like he is going to lead a team. And so any team that drafts him really needs to have an understanding of that and needs to be prepared for that. This guy's going to come in and it's not, I don't think there's going to be that sort of rookie, we got to, really let him earn his time or he's got to do this and that. I think Scoot's coming in to say, no, like I'm going to be the lead dog.
Yeah, well, and that's interesting, too. We can talk more about it. I want to get to these Brandon Miller comments, but the personality of Scoot Henderson and the personality of LaMelo Ball, it's going to be fascinating to dissect as we get closer to the NBA draft. Just if that's a problem, how it's absolutely not a problem, wherever you fall on that, that's going to be interesting to dissect. Let's get to the Brandon Miller comments, too. He told teams about his involvement in the shooting death of Jamia Harris. He said that he told teams just what he learned about the situation. He asked what he would have done when asked what he would have done differently that night. He said, like I said, just be more aware of my surroundings and what I'm surrounded by. When he was asked if he had made any changes since then, he said, definitely. Always check my surroundings, surround myself with guys that are just pro guys, the guys that I want to be around. So you have this situation, right? For those that don't know, the death of Jamia Harris, it was a teammate of Brandon Miller's on the Alabama squad at the time that did shoot and kill her. And I believe that's correct. And
allegedly.
Yeah.
I think he's been found guilty yet.
And Brandon Miller is the one that was driving the car with the gun, brought the gun to him. So that was the situation with Brandon Miller at Alabama. And I'll make sure that I have that correct. I don't have it in front of me. But all of that to be said, is this something that you accept from him, Doug? How does this tie in to the Brandon and into drafting him, especially with Charlotte already having Miles Bridges, who experienced legal trouble this offseason?
Well, certainly that has to factor in, but I think also this situation around Ja Morant has to factor in. I think it puts this really under the microscope, and it's not the same kind of situation, but you have to ask yourself, are you about to invest a lot of capital in a player that is going to compound mistakes with more mistakes? And that's the kind of questions I'm sure Miller is getting, and that's why he's giving these answers about, hey, I've changed the kind of people that I'm communicating with. And really it's going to be down to a team to decide if Miller is being sincere about that, or if once he gets into the NBA, all of that changes again and you're going to be dealing with different incidents down the line. That's tough. I mean, that's the toughest call you can make. It's not anything you can measure at the combine. It's not anything that you can see on tape. It's a little bit of sort of this mysterious looking a guy in the eye and trying to determine whether he's telling the truth or not about those changes and the situation itself. How much did he know about what he was bringing? Because I think there have been conflicting reports of he knew that he was bringing a gun, or maybe he didn't know he was bringing a gun and he was just, it's a strange situation. And I think teams got to get the full details on it and decide whether Brandon Miller is sincere.
And so just to be perfectly clear, so Jamia Harris, as we mentioned, she was shot and killed January 15th. Miller was reported months later to have delivered the gun to then Alabama teammate Darius Miles. The gun was allegedly used by another man, Michael Davis, in the shooting. Miller's attorney later released a statement saying that his client was not aware Miles had left the gun in his car and learned about it on his way to pick Miles up. Last thing, Miles and Davis both now face capital murder charges. Miles pled not guilty, is pleading not guilty. Same with Miller. He was not charged with a crime or disciplined by Alabama. Such brought the situation to light. So that is the off-the-court stuff with Brandon Miller and him addressing it. Did want to address just one on-court thing with Brandon before we move on to the last segment. Everybody's telling him to put on weight, which makes a lot of sense. You look at the body, he's a frail dude. We're doing this with Victor Wembanyama, but also Brandon Miller playing out there on the perimeter. We know just how much, like we got the two skinny guys in the draft. It's definitely not Scoot. No one's really telling him, oh my God, you need to put on weight as a backcourt guy. The dude's already a football player. Brandon Miller is one of those players here, Doug. How much do you care about that when we talk about that aspect of looking at NBA prospects coming into the league?
Well, I think it's obviously an issue because you don't know whether a player is capable of bulking up or not, and what that bulking up is going to do to that player's skill set, or their ability to stay healthy when if they have to radically transform their body. Some guys just can't do it, and some guys try to do it and then decide that it's too hard or it's changing their game in some way, and then they decide not to do it and they stay skinny. And some guys do put on the weight and then they have knee issues, and some guys put on the weight and they turn into Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like you don't know, but what we do know is that Brandon Miller probably will have to change his body somewhat to accommodate the rigors of the NBA game at the wing position. And you have to decide, is this guy going to, have a Jason Tatum-like transformation where he becomes bigger, stronger, and still maintains the skill set and the speed that he needs to be one of those sort of super wings. And I'm sure a lot of guys are confident that he can do that, but that is part of the gamble. And when we say that the draft these days is a crapshoot, it's because Brandon Miller's situation is not unique. All these guys are like 19 years old. And you're trying, when you draft these guys 2, 3, 4, 5, you're trying to project what their body is going to look like after they enter an NBA level training program. You're trying to project what they're going to be 4 or 5 years down the line when their body is way different. This whole process is a little bit insane, but here we are, we're doing it.
Yeah, this is exactly what it is to lead up to the NBA draft. Try to figure out everything you possibly can before you make the selection that could alter your franchise's future. It is absolutely nuts. All right, let's go to the last segment coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. We're going to take you inside the room. The NBA has allowed us access, and we have some reporting on what went inside the room that revealed the results of the lottery ultimately. We'll get to that in just a moment. But this episode first is brought to you by Birddogs. You saw Doug show his butt in the Birddog shorts on the live show. It looked fantastic, and that's because he was wearing Birddogs shorts. They're good because of the fit, but also the comfort and the versatility. You can look better and feel great wearing Birddogs. Their stretchy fabric makes legs look fantastic, and they're comfier than any other shorts or pants, and they give the freedom to wear one pair of shorts, pants on the golf course, to a meeting, date, or hanging out with friends. There's so many different ways that you can wear Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. And when you enter promo code LockedOnNBA, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every single order. Awesome stuff. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets.
This is Locked On Hornets.
Golden State spent almost a minuscule amount of time with 0 of their starters out on the floor. They had at least one out there the entire time.
Yeah, 4 Hall of Famers.
Yeah, they do. And so
you just put them anywhere.
You just have one out there.
Stack them up.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, Doug, I saw you tweet this out. You were actually kind of paying attention to the process going on behind closed doors that saw the Hornets almost have a shot at the number 1 pick, but also maybe not so much, despite them moving up to the 2nd overall selection. Doug, what can you tell us about what you were doing when you were researching the process behind closed doors?
Well, of course, we had to aggregate Jake Fisher specifically because he's asked not to be aggregated. We got a big one. Going fishing. Here we go. Jake Fisher from Yahoo doing the reporting here. And apparently, and we talked about this on another show, but the process is they throw 14 ping pong balls, numbered 1 through 14, and they pick combinations. And those combinations tell the people who are choosing what team gets the first pick, then the second pick, then the third pick, and then the fourth pick. And so, you're drawing 4 different balls. And so by the 4th ball, you're going to know like who's in and who's out, who's got a chance and who doesn't have a chance at all. And from my reading of this, it doesn't appear like I'm not 100% confident on this, but it doesn't appear like the Hornets by the final ping pong ball had an opportunity to be the team that was going to select Victor Wembanyama. It looked like the Wizards had 6 opportunities. There were 6 balls that could have fell that would have meant the Wizards. 1 that could have meant the Magic, and 1 that could have meant the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs obviously won the lottery.
Oh man, that's tough for the Wiz. If that's true, that's harder than Charlotte stuff. Like because it's hard to wrap your brain around, right? Like it's so much easier to say, "Oh, we were so close, we got the 2nd overall pick." But if this is true and it came to light and was understood to its fullest extent, Wiz fans would just be bending over in pain. The fact that you had 6 balls in the chamber compared to the Spurs 1, and yet San Antonio gets the job done.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because psychologically, when we see the reveal, we see it go 4, 3, 2, 1. And so it looks like, oh man, we were so close.
Right.
But then you go behind the scenes and understand how they're doing this, and they pick the first pick first. And it looks like the Hornets didn't even have a shot. So hopefully that makes some fans feel better. Everyone's in their feelings about this 2nd pick, but I think people, if the YouTube chat is any indication and some of the comments that we're getting, I think fans are already starting, the sickos out there are already starting the rationalization. I've seen comments being like, Wemby's super tall, super lanky. Those guys don't tend to stay healthy. People are already doing the thing where they're going, okay, the 2nd pick is actually the pick you want.
Well, yeah, right. And Portland fans are telling themselves that the 3rd pick is what you want because look at Charlotte. They landed LaMelo Ball in the 3rd pick. James Harden was the 3rd pick, all that stuff. So you're right. And just speaking of which, I know I mentioned a little bit in the first segment with Nick, but yeah, it took – it's funny. We saw the live reaction. We've joked about it quite a bit. I was bending over in pain while you were doing a great job manning the show. We did the 180-degree turn. You were the professional. You were the radio professional. And I was on my sicko bleep where I was bending over in pain, as I mentioned, right? Like I saw the alternate universe with Wemby in a Hornets uniform. But I spent all of the midday 12 to 3 on WFNZ trying to convince Hornets fans that Scoot, like I don't want it to be, the Hornets are doomed if they don't pick Scoot. But you and I, like there's a lot of people that agree. He's got to be the pick. And the dude is awesome. He's so good. And it's going to be so much fun. So anyways, just kind of accepting not getting Wemby. The next day, it was all good. Like after we did the live show, there'd be some like twitches. I'd be like, oh, Wemby. Oh, and then I'd just start laughing. But, God, we could have had Wemby. Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. The next day, I was fully embracing Scoot Henderson. So I'm excited about it. Last thing, there was also some reporting on revealed nepotism in the front office. Doug, you care to explain this through your research?
Well, anyone that's been paying attention to the Charlotte Hornets long enough understands that, nepotism is a part of this front office. It has been since Michael Jordan took over as owner. This one comes to us courtesy of Buzz Peterson, who is the assistant GM and was the representative for the Charlotte Hornets in the lottery room. He was the guy keeping his eyes on the whole process. And in this reporting from Jake Fisher, discussing Buzz Peterson and his lucky charm that he brought to bring some luck to the Hornets. Here's the reporting from Jake. Peterson had a small wooden cross in his pocket, a long ago gift from his mother Barbara, who told him to carry the memento in his pocket when Peterson stormed the sidelines during his 2 decades of college coaching. Disaster, though, almost struck the Charlotte executive. When Peterson arrived in Chicago on Saturday, he realized he left the cross back at home on his bathroom vanity. And so Peterson phoned his son-in-law, Jackson Simmons, who works in the Hornets video room, to bring the cross to Catherine Caracas, Charlotte's senior director of basketball operations, who hand-delivered the important item to Peterson when she joined the week of action here for the NBA Draft Combine. So once again, we've got a son-in-law in the video room. We've got Michael Jordan's brother is part of the executive team and scouting team. It's just it is what it is. And I think it's part of the reason when we're discussing the potential sale of this team, when we talk about some of the positive effects that a sale would bring, it would clean house in that respect and bring in some new ideas, and possibly, especially if it's going to be an ownership group where it's not one person that is sort of over, most of the team, then you might have a situation where. And this is, I'm not saying anything. I don't know Jackson Simmons. I don't know his ability to
We know his ability to play basketball. He was a basketball player at Carolina not too long ago.
Well, that's fine.
The Carolina Blue Mafia is strong.
That's fine. Go Heels. But that's my alma mater. That's fine. But this is not about Jackson Simmons. It's about when you have an organization where nepotism and favors and different things permeate the organization, you're going to, I think, immediately have questions about, are the best people being brought into this organization at every single level? Are we really going through a process that's going to bring the absolute best people to evaluate tape, to evaluate prospects for the NBA draft, for example? Is there a process in place that is independent? And I think when you look at situations like this and the many others in this organization, I think you have to come to the conclusion, or at least be super doubtful that process is in place.
Well, no, and I will say this though, right? Like the Carolina Blue Mafia is funny. I remember, so I didn't know Jackson Simmons worked in the organization, to be quite honest. It's hilarious. I had no clue. And then I remember going to get an interview with Mark Williams or PJ or somebody, and I saw Brandon Robinson just rolling a big old cart of basketballs, also ex-Tar Heel from a few years ago. So, they are full of the Carolina Blue in that organization, which is certainly something we all knew.
And
so
look,